In the mid-17th century, Dundee had not escaped the persecution of witches. Probably the most memorable of these cases was Grissel Jaffray in November 1669 at the Sea Gate. It was thought the burning of Grissel was a myth, but there is an official account preserved in the Charter Room of Dundee. It states that there was a man called James Butchart, a maltman or brewer in Dundee, born in 1594. He was made a burgess of the city in 1615 and was a relatively successful man. He married Grissel, who it seems came from Aberdeen, and the couple had one child, a son, who became a mariner. Little is known about the life of Butchart or his wife, except that they lived in Calendar Close, which stood slightly to the west of Ceres Wynd, with their house being on the corner of the Overgate. The origin of Grissel's reputation as a witch is unknown. She was probably simply more acute than her neighbours, and could foretell disaster or good luck by using her judgment. In those days she would have been known as a spaewife. The couple survived the siege of Dundee in 1651, but the fashion for witch-finding or witch-hunting, which infected the whole country, took hold on the three ministers of Dundee: Henry Scrimmer of St Mary's, John Guthrie of the South Church, and William Rate of the Third Charge, now St Paul's. These three were the leading ministers in the presbytery of Dundee, and the reputation of Grissel as a wise woman came at an unfortunate time. The destruction of the presbytery records, or possibly their silence, prevents us from knowing what the accusations were that were brought against this grey-haired old woman. It's difficult to know what protracted examinations were made of her, and by what means they were carried out to extort confessions of witchcraft from her. It's also unknown the extent of mental or physical torture she had to endure to force her to accuse her friends and neighbours of sorcery. Whatever happened, the ministers declared her guilty of witchcraft. On 11th November 1669, the Privy Council, having been informed that Grissel was a prisoner in the toll booth of Dundee at the corner of High Street and Overgate, accused of witchcraft, issued an order for her trial. The remit of the ministers and the town council stated that, if by her own confession, without any sort of torture or other indirect means used, it shall be found she hath renounced her baptism, entered into paction with the devil, or otherwise malefices be legally proven against her, that then, and no otherwise, they cause the sentence of death to be executed upon her. This was her death sentence. Careful examination of the Town Council minutes for 1669 has shown that no record exists regarding the trial and execution of this unfortunate woman. There is no doubt, however, that she was worried to the stake and her body burned to ashes, for there's an entry in the minutes referring to that fact. Mr. Home of Register House in Edinburgh copied a passage from the minute book of the Incorporation of Maltmen. It stated, Dundee, the 23rd day of November, 1669, anent such as are delated for witchcraft. The ministers having also reported to the council that Grissel Jaffray, which, at her execution, did delate several persons as being guilty of witchcraft to them, and therefore desired that for their exoneration some course might be undertaken against those delated. The council in order thereunto nominated the provost, the present bailies, the old bailies, the Dean of Guild, and others to meet with the ministers and to commune with them on the said matter, and consider of the best ways may be taken with the delated. This proves that Grissel was actually tried and executed, and that the ministers were still thirsting for the blood of the other so-called witches. What became of these other women that Grissel had denounced does not appear. No further reference is made to them in the town council minutes, although on 8th February 1670 the council consented to the employment by ministers of an approver or witch-finder, who was to discover witches by certain marks on their bodies. Whether the councillors acquiesced or refused to assist the ministers in their persecuting work is unknown. It's possible they'd been horrified by what had happened to Grissel. A tradition exists that this accused witch was burned in the sea gate, near the spot where the first cross of Dundee stood. There is also a story which is a bit dubious, that when the foundation of the Jaffray Brothers building was being excavated in the 1850s, a large amount of wood ashes was discovered, which was believed to be the place where she had suffered her fate. But this seems too far east of the traditionally accepted place of her burning. There is one last entry in the council minutes concerning this case. On the last day of November 1669, about 10 days after the execution, the aged husband of Grissel, now in dire poverty, petitioned for admission to the local hospital, the equivalent of a poorhouse. The entry reads, "Petition James Butchard. The council, upon a petition presented to them by James Butchard, maltman, desirous to be admitted to the benefit of the hospital, recommend the report of the petitioner's good fame and reputation to the ministers in kirk session." This application came before the council on 7th December 1669, and the ministers obviously decided to be more gracious with the old man and allowed him into the poorhouse. In a testimonial it stated, "The good life and conversation of James Butchard reported to the council under the hand of Mr. John Guthrie, moderator of the church. The council therefore admit the said James to the benefit of the said hospital, and ordains the master of the hospital to receive him." With this entry, the tragic lives of James Butchard and his wife Grissel come to an end, so far as authentic records go. But there has long been a tradition that the sailor son of the aged couple brought his ship into Dundee on the very day of his mother's execution, and when he learned that the smoke rising above the sea gate was from her funeral pyre, he sailed hastily away and never returned to his native city. In Dundee, a memorial mosaic and plaque commemorates Grissel, the last alleged witch to have been executed there. On 8th March 2022, Scotland's then First Minister Nicola Sturgeon apologised to all men and women accused of witchcraft, calling it a historic injustice on a colossal scale. The 1563 Witchcraft Act lasted until 1736, resulting in the deaths of thousands of ordinary people during an extraordinary time. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.